The verdict right there. We know that Combs himself spoke to the judge. The judge responded. Lay out the sentencing here and what went down in the courtroom today.
She said he has to stay.
This was a very long sentencing hearing which Sean Combs himself, once larger than life, was left begging for mercy, standing at the defense table, telling the judge that he's a changed man, apologizing for his behavior. But that request for a lenient sentence of time served was rejected by the judge, Arun Subramanian, who said it was insufficient to send the kind of message that he wanted to send, that violence against women must be met with real accountability. And so he sentenced Sean Combs to 4 years in prison. That's not as much as federal prosecutors here wanted. They wanted 11 years in prison, reminding the judge that Sean Combs has a penchant for violence and abuse, pointing to 2016 hotel security video showing Combs attacking Cassie Ventura. Combs says he knows that video intimately. He apologized to Cassie Ventura. The judge said 11 years was unreasonable, but 4 years is just the right amount, the judge said, to send a message to Sean Combs, to victims of domestic violence, that their accounts will be taken seriously.
Aaron, thanks. Let's go ahead and bring in a trial attorney and ABC News legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, we just heard Aaron lay out right there that the defense was hoping for 14 months in credit for time served. The prosecution wanted 11 years. So this is somewhere in the middle. Is this verdict what you expected?
It actually was not what I expected, and this is why I say that. The probation report said anywhere from 70 to 87 months, much higher than the 50 months that the judge gave. And understand, and I'll try to break down the math as best as I can, the judge understands the math of how this all works. With 50 months in the federal system, you only do 85% of that. So you take away about 8 months or so, that's 42 months. And don't forget that Sean Combs has already been sitting in MDC, the jail here in Brooklyn, New York, for 13 months. So you subtract 13 months even from that, you're looking at something like 2 years, maybe 3 years at the end of the day. The judge knew that and still gave this sentence. I think if you're Sean Combs and his defense team, a hard day, but overall a win for them.
Okay, Brian, stand by for us. So let's bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor and ABC News legal contributor, Bernarda Villalona. And Bernarda, we've also saw today some emotional testimony. We saw numerous children of Sean Diddy Combs speaking before the court. Combs himself saying that he's a changed man. There was this video that they put together talking about Combs being a family man, his impact on the community. How much of that do you think made a difference here in the judge's decision?
Well, today was definitely Judgment Day for Sean Diddy Combs. So what the judge told Sean Diddy Combs was like, look, in terms of your life work, of all the good you've done, in terms that you're a great father, it doesn't erase what I heard and what I saw during this 8-week trial. And what he heard and saw during this 8-week trial was one of Sean Diddy Combs taking advantage of Jane and Cassie by being violent to them, taking advantage of their emotions, having them engage in several sex acts, either by drugs or alcohol or by the manipulation. And the judge sent a message that, yes, you have family, yes, you have people that love you, but Jane and Cassie were victims, and victims should be accounted for, and someone should speak for the victims and deter this type of conduct. And that's why the judge didn't go with the 14th month recommendation by the defense, but instead handed down a sentence of 50 months, 4 years and 2 months, to show that this is accountability, this is deterrence, this is protecting the public, and this is what the verdict is going to be today. And when people remember Sean Diddy Combs, they know that he is a convicted felon sentenced to 50 months for his actions throughout a decade on women.
And Aaron, this verdict today follows a 2-month trial, emotional, at times graphic testimony. We saw more of that play out today, at least the emotional part. But we can't forget the victims that were part of this, and there was some other color that played out in the courtroom today. Just walk us through some of the other things that we heard and what you saw.
It was a dramatic sentencing hearing, atypical of what we usually see here in federal court in Lower Manhattan. With the defense presentation lasted for hours. The defense called no witnesses during trial, but his attorneys, 5 of them, effectively acted as character witnesses for Sean Combs, talking about his achievements, how he's influenced them in the community. But the judge said that a lifetime of good works cannot erase his other conduct, and federal prosecutors urged the judge to look at the Cassie video, to consider the violence he inflicted that they said was life-altering for women. Sean Combs himself grew tearful as he turned to his children to apologize for his conduct. He told his mother, "You raised me better." And his children crowded around a microphone at one point, 6 of them, each pleading the judge for his immediate release. His daughters sobbing through their presentation to the judge, begging him to give their father a second chance to return him to the family. But you heard the judge say there was a need for deterrence, a need to show victims of domestic violence that their accounts will be taken seriously. That's why he said he imposed a 4-year sentence on Sean Combs. He also did something else, Whit. He added a $500,000 fine. That's the largest amount allowed by the law. But the judge again said it was part of the sum total of Combs's conduct. That's why he deserved it.
And Aaron, I just want to talk a little bit more about the atmosphere around the courtroom. We were looking at images of Combs' children coming in and out of the courthouse, also some helicopter pictures overhead of the crowds that have gathered there. I know throughout the 2-month trial, you saw plenty of crowds out there every single day as this played out. Talk more about the cultural impact here, because as a rap mogul, he touched so many different people in different ways. And the judge actually referenced that today when he was speaking to Combs.
He did, Whit, and he knows the cultural impact of Sean Combs, his pop culture icon status, his celebrity, but he also knows what Sean Combs did. And though he was not convicted of crimes of violence, federal prosecutors convinced him that violence was part of his repertoire, repeatedly inflicting it on people like Cassie Ventura, on people like Jane, the pseudonym for another one of his girlfriends who testified here. There are hundreds of people who are out here in Lower Manhattan in front of the courtroom, many of them supporters who were hoping that they would see Sean Combs walk out of those golden doors of the courthouse a free man, headed home to Miami, as he said he wanted to go to care for his children and his mother. Many others, detractors, who say that Sean Combs deserved to spend time behind bars because they, like the judge, could not be blind to the very conduct that they saw on that video from 2016 in the Los Angeles hotel, Combs attacking Cassie. When the sentence was handed down by the judge, Whit, Combs was sitting on his hands, expressionless.
And we know that Combs also submitted a letter to the judge the night before saying that he apologized. He's sincerely sorry for all of the hurt and the pain that I have caused others by my conduct. I take full responsibility and accountability for my past wrongs. Let's go back to Brian Buckmeyer, because Brian, we also know that there are a number of civil cases against Combs. Talk to us about the next steps, not only for Combs and how it relates to his time behind bars, but how these civil cases could play out.
Yeah, so for the civil cases, for the most part, I know that when Sean Combs was sentenced, the verdict came down in this case, there were some 60 civil cases that were paused, because for the most part, when you are facing both criminal and civil cases, you pause a civil because you make the argument that any testimony you give in a civil case could be used against you in a criminal case. That's no longer the issue. So those cases will now be unpaused, and they'll proceed as they would have without this criminal case. But from a criminal standpoint, what I'd imagine is the defense are going to file their motions of appeal, making whatever kind of arguments in terms of what the judge did or did not consider to come to this number. But for Sean Combs, he's going back to the Metropolitan Detention Center, or MDC, and he'll probably stay there for the coming weeks. I know these defense attorneys in the Southern District of New York, what typically happens is you're either going to be put in somewhere in Pennsylvania, upstate New York, or New Jersey. But if you do have family, and we saw a lot of mention of his mother who had surgery, she's 83 years old, I would imagine that Sean Combs would make a request to be somewhere close to his family, close to his mother, maybe close to his younger children so they can visit him frequently. There's going to be a push to try to have him in the best facility and probably the lowest level of security, a light or low level. And we saw mentions of that during the sentencing, that they didn't want certain facts to come in because they didn't want him in a maximum or even medium security prison. So those will be some of the next steps, both criminal and civil.
And Bernarda, from the prosecution's perspective here, obviously they didn't get the conviction on the more serious charges of racketeering and such that they initially went for. And then here they were asking for 11 years in prison. They get 4. How is the prosecution looking at this? And does this verdict send a message to sexual assault suspects?
Yeah, so when you're looking from the prosecution perspective, the prosecution is questioning, is this justice? For those victims, is this justice, this type of sentence, or even the conviction being that Sean Combs was acquitted of the racketeering conspiracy and the sex trafficking? You got to think that the prosecutor stands as the voice of the voiceless, the voice of those victims. And while they're not happy that they only got the conviction on the transportation to engage in prostitution, they still serve as that voice today when they represented the government and the people of the United States inside of that courtroom. So what message does it send, that 50 months, that time of sentence? I think the strongest message is the words that came out of Judge Subramanian's mouth, where he said and talked about these victims, how they were manipulated by Sean Combs, that they deserve a voice, that accountability is expected in this case, and that he will hand out accountability. It's not the 11 years that the prosecution sought, but still is an accountability in the sense that no matter how much money you have, you will still be held accountable in a court of law and will be sentenced according to the guidelines, so below the guidelines in this case.
And Aaron Katersky, the judge, we talked about how the judge had a message to Combs. He did reference the cultural impact that he has had. Also, Combs as an entrepreneur, he referenced what he had done for his community and talking to people. What more did the judge say?
The judge told Sean Combs that his contributions to society were incalculable. And he also said to Combs, quoting here, "Mr. Combs, I know you feel you are in a dark place right now, but these crimes were serious ones." And the judge went on to say to Combs that you and your family are going to get through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel. The judge clearly wanted to express to Combs and his family that he heard their pleas for mercy, their pleas for his immediate release. He said he couldn't do it, but he said there will be time at the end of the term of incarceration where he could make the kinds of contributions to society that Combs swore and others swore on his behalf that he wanted to make. And Whit, if you'll indulge me, I just got a message from Cassie Ventura's attorney, Doug Wigdor, who says that while nothing can undo the trauma caused by Combs, the sentence imposed today recognizes the impact of the serious offenses he committed. We are confident that with the support of her family and friends, Ms. Ventura will continue healing, knowing that her bravery and fortitude have been an inspiration to so many. An immediate reaction from the attorney for Cassie Ventura, Doug Wigdor. She had written to the judge expressing fear of the hold and sway that she believed Combs still had on her life, with telling the judge that she feared that if he were immediately released, he would immediately go after her and her family after her painstaking testimony over 4 days of trial.
Yes, expressing that fear of retribution if he were to be set free. Brian Buckmeyer, if you could expand more on the impact on culture and music. And is it possible for somebody like Combs to make a comeback after he's released from prison?
You know, with most people, I would say no. But as I've followed this case, and even in the podcast that we've done here at ABC, Bad Rap, the case against Diddy, if there was ever a person who had the ability to reinvent themselves over the years and change public perception of themselves, it would be Sean Combs. And so I think the judge said it best. A lifetime of success and helping people are not going to wash away the horrible acts that we saw. The video of Sean Combs brutally assaulting Cassie in that hotel video will forever be a part of his legacy, whatever it may be. I think in terms of what he did, in terms of bringing a genre of music as well as a cultural sensation towards rap and hip hop and R&B, the people that he has brought to the forefront of the music, as well as business acumen, the people who spoke on his behalf, I think they spoke truthfully about who he was. But this was very much a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that there was almost two sides to this man, that at least I saw, someone who has followed his music from a childhood and also watching this trial. I think the question about what happens now in terms of his impact is, how does he change from this? Are the words that we saw that he put down on that letter for the judge and that he spoke in court truthful, or were they just words in order to evade a greater sentence? I don't know. And I think we're going to have to wait and see what this term of incarceration holds for him, and especially what happens when he's released.
And Bernarda, I also want to get your take on what this potentially means for victims moving forward and feeling empowered to speak. Because we know that one of the witnesses who was actually supposed to read a victim impact statement today bowed out before sentencing occurred. And then we heard from Cassie Ventura there in that statement, her concern for retribution. I just wonder your final thoughts on what you think that this could mean for victims going forward.
Well, it depends. I mean, for most victims, you can see it this way, in the sense of that you had a government, you had a prosecutor's office that was willing to go toe-to-toe with a man as powerful as Sean Diddy Combs, who once had the key to the city, and was willing to back up these victims and believed in these victims and what happened to them, and was willing to do the fight. But then on the flip side, you can say, well, I can be scared because this man has so much power. Look, someone told their story and the jury didn't find him guilty of all the charges, or the sentence was too low despite of all the horrendous acts that they heard through trial. But in the end, what this story says, what the judge says, is what seals this case, in the sense that victims were heard with this sentence.
Bernarda, thank you. Aaron Katursky, we've been talking about the verdict a lot, but just give us a sense of the logistics now. Where does Sean Diddy Combs go from here, and what's the next 24 hours like?
The first thing Sean Combs did at the conclusion of court wit was to pause, to turn toward his family, still seated in the gallery, and look at them as if to say it's going to be okay. I was here at an earlier court hearing last week, Whit, when Combs was given the opportunity to speak directly to his family after everyone else had cleared out. And he told them, whatever happens, it's going to be okay. He will deal with it. This is not the sentence he wanted, but it may have been the one he was expecting with.
Aaron Katursky and the entire team, thanks so much. Once again, Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 50 months for his 2 convictions on prostitution-related offenses, about 4 years. He'll also get that credit for time served. We're going to return you to regular programming. Our coverage will continue on our streaming channel, ABC News Live and abcnews.com. Then we'll have the very latest and a full wrap-up on World News Tonight. I'm Whit Johnson. Have a great day.